Well, good morning and welcome back. Special guest this morning, Congressman Gianforte. Thanks for joining us today.
Justine, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Of course, you've been busy here. You've had a couple of days and you're home for a little while. So
this is the most fun of this job, is traveling around the state. We were down in Corvallis and Hamilton yesterday.
That's right.
I think the highlight, well, there are two highlights for me. We recognized Doug Mason down in Corvallis. So we had a standing room only group there at the fire hall, recognizing him for service to country and community. Then I was over at the Corvallis High School.
That was one of my questions. I was going to ask you what they had to say.
I love meeting with high school students. We had about 200 students. It was the juniors and seniors at Corvallis High. The most insightful questions, they were concerned about consumer data privacy. Like, how is Facebook using your information and what should the laws be? This is one of the issues we're facing on the Energy and Commerce Committee now back in Washington, to make sure that the internet continues to prosper, but we also protect consumers. So they were very concerned about how their data was being used.
Interesting questions.
Yeah, and then we talked about entrepreneurship. Many of them were interested in possibly starting businesses, and they wanted to know what it's really like back in Washington. So we had a far-ranging discussion.
All right. Well, sounds like you had a good time down there.
We did, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you kind of change topics a little bit. The political spectrum ramping up for the 2020 campaign. Where are you at on a decision to run for re-election to Congress or perhaps seek the governor's office, as some have speculated you might? And how soon before you might announce your plans, if you have any?
So it's a great honor to serve Montana. We love this state. We've raised our family here. On that particular question, I've been talking to people all over the state. I've been getting a lot of encouragement to run for governor. I have not made a final decision, but I'm seriously considering it, and you'll be the first to know.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll hold you to that. We've seen the reports about the growing number of immigrants at the southern border the past several months. What do you think it's going to take to solve that problem? And are there other solutions in addition to the president's border wall that you could support? Sure.
So I was down on the southern border in January. We toured 3 ports, and we have a humanitarian and a national security crisis. One landowner we met with, documented with trail cams, he estimates about 10,000 people a year coming across his property alone. This is bringing drugs into our country. Everyone we met with, Customs and Border Patrol, local ranchers, local law enforcement, they all say we need a physical barrier. So that's one part of the solution. We also need immigration reform. We need a robust guest worker program so our ag community has the workers they need. We need to move to more of a merit-based system. We need to get rid of the visa lottery, or at least reduce it. So there's a number of things we have to do. We need a little more collaboration back in Washington. I'll do what I can to work across the aisle to make sure that happens.
All right, and we hear very little about security on the northern border. Are you at all worried about what might develop for our region there?
Well, the concern on the northern border right now is the fact that we've been reducing hours. I was on the phone yesterday with the acting secretary of Customs and Border Patrol, relaying some of the experiences our friends up on the High Line have had with, they came out and did listening sessions, but they were mostly telling sessions, not listening sessions. We need to keep those ports open so that there could be commerce across that border. The drugs are less of an issue. It's still present. I've visited many of the ports up on our Canadian border. We just have to stay vigilant there.
All right, and recently you were in China to talk with officials there, the U.S. ambassador and Chinese trade officials. What can you tell us about the trade talks progress so far, and anything else happening?
Well, we need a trade deal. It's critically important to our ag producers here. I was part of the first congressional visit to China this year, and I was encouraged by the conversations. I think that we're getting close to a deal. Ambassador Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Ambassador, was there just the week after us. Our group that went was a bipartisan group, and we delivered a unified message. We need a trade deal. We're with the administration, and we need China to behave by the laws that the rest of the world observes. We can't have forced technology transfer. We need an enforcement mechanism, but we have to get a trade deal for our farmers and ranchers so we have access to their markets. They need to be reciprocal and fair.
All right, and of course, that's all the question I have for you this morning, but you're headed north, right? Today?
We are, yeah. This is the best part of the job. I get to travel all over the state. I've been meeting with, I'm going to meet some seniors later this morning. I'm doing some more school visits. I'm meeting with local officials. I'm having lunch with county commissioners up in Lake County. So I'll just keep staying out. That's how I know how to represent Montana back in Washington.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us here on Montana This Morning.